Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland in New Zealand. And I'm joined this week by Mary James. How are you, Mary?
I'm good. We're experiencing spring here, so it's lovely.
Experiencing spring. Is it not officially spring, but feels like spring?
Exactly.
Yeah. And also, Ilka, how are you?
I'm doing well. We are not there yet with spring. It's about 15 degrees here, so it's freezing cold.
Have you had any snow recently? I know that it's been pretty cold up further north from you.
Yeah, we haven't had too much snow, but it's just been super cold. And I live in an old drafty house, and it's been, I've been wanting to renovate my house and put nice new windows in.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking this week about being too warm in kitchens. Really great interview that both of you did with Chef Chris. I really enjoyed listening to this, so we're going to jump into that pretty quickly because there's lots of really great information about electrification and some strong links there to Passive House. But before we do that, I want to do a quick shout out to our sponsors and everyone that supports the Passive House Accelerator. That is our stakeholder partner, which is NYSERDA. And the founding sponsors of the Passive House Accelerator are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwall, and Zola Windows. Now, champion sponsors are Bowizo, Cascadia Windows and Doors, European Architectural Supply, Facro, Icon Windows and Doors, and Intelligent Membranes, and of course Source 2050. I want to do a special shout out for the sponsor of this week, which is Icon Windows, and we definitely really appreciate their support to do everything that we do here on the podcast, but also across the Passive House Accelerator. All right. We were just chatting, Mary and Ilka. Do one of you want to just give a quick intro or how you know of Chris? He's not necessarily in the Passive House world, but Mary, where's he from?
He's based in Pittsburgh, and first came across him during our Reimagine Buildings Electrification Conference, and thought it would be great to dive more into electrification and kitchens and healthy cooking. So here we are.
Great. Well, let's get into it. Chris does a bit of an introduction to his background and some really great content here. So hope you enjoy this interview.
Well, welcome to the Passive House podcast. Joining us today is Chef Chris Galarza, co-founder of EcoChef, founder of Forward Dining Solutions, and author of Understanding the Green Industrial Revolution, as well as many other accomplishments, but I'm not going to list them all. I am very excited to be talking with you today. Food is right up there with Passive House as a subject of interest for me. But before we jump into a little bit about your history, I want to hear about, I understand that you gave a cooking demonstration for the U.S. Congress.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we partnered with the Air Club on a workshop with some congressional leaders on understanding how electrification impacts American families and businesses, and about helping them understand how preserving these tax credits help make this technology affordable for those who traditionally probably wouldn't be able to afford it, right? So instead of it being like top down kind of thing, we can kind of start in the middle and kind of spread out from there. So it was really, really great. Sparked a lot of great conversation and had a lot of great feedback. It was a lot of fun.
I guess what's really interesting about this is basically looking at the relationship between kitchen and cooking and energy efficiency and electrification and maybe even air quality, right? If we're coming from the passive house world, so air quality is always kind of on our minds as well. So you're saying you're talking by doing the cooking demonstration, you're kind of talking about the electrification. So that means you use certain appliances to do that. And yeah, how did you go about it?
Yeah. So electrification, especially in the kitchen, means a lot of different things. Obviously, it means by transitioning away from fossil fuel cooking to a better way of cooking using induction, for example, as one of the many technologies in these kitchens. Uh, but just like, food is a common language for us all and brings us together, I believe economics is as well. So when I have this discussion, it's not about environmentalism, although that is a byproduct of electrifying, of being more sustainable, which so someone at the DC talk um, put it really, really succinct when they said, I don't really care for the term sustainability. I like responsibility. I think that's a really good term for us to adopt. But on another note, electrification, what that does for a commercial kitchen is a lot, right? For starters, it makes the kitchen cooler, right? And because it's cooler, now your electricity costs aren't as high, or rather, let's back up. What I mean by that is that the kitchen is cooler, your air conditioning is not cycling on and off, right? Your your refrigeration isn't cycling on and off as often either. So the investment you have in your refrigeration, for example, is going to go a lot further if it's not having to cycle as often, which is also going to save you money in the long run. There's also a reduction in water consumption, a reduction in chemical consumption, a reduction in cleanup time, which leads to either saving on labor costs or increasing production. And not to mention, there is an increase in production. You can cook, for example, nearly 71 pounds of food per hour with induction versus the 38 pounds of food per hour with gas. Gas is very inefficient, which is why chefs always preheat their pans. They're always leaving those burners on to keep things hot because it takes so much longer to get things hotter with gas than if they were to use, say, other ways. Again, induction being the optimal example here. So, yeah, that's kind of where the conversation is to understand the economics, which is where the book Understanding the Green Industrial Revolution comes in, because it is an understanding that there is a new economic system being born by people like you and I who are deciding where we spend our money matters to us, right? And we're seeing that all over the world, right? We see that every day when we go to buy coffee, right? We're happy to pay a little bit extra for fair trade coffee. So that's the impetus of all this, right? Having that open discussion with your guests and saying, hey, these are why we're doing these things. We're trying to create an environment that's safer for our staff, so they're not breathing in methane and ethane and benzene and formaldehyde, which no one wants to be breathing in, right? As well as making sure that every dollar we spend in the kitchen goes further, right? Um, Gas equipment is around 35% efficient. That's under lab conditions. In the hands of a chef, it plummets to around 10 or 20%, meaning for every dollar you're spending on gas, you're realistically using 20 cents or so of that dollar, which is not a very good way of operating a business. I would say I would be quickly out of business if I was just throwing money away like that. But that's how the hospitality industry has been working forever. And I'd say forever, really, in the last 100 years, because that's how long we've been cooking on gas. In addition to that, induction is 90% efficient, which means for every dollar we're spending on electricity, which people say is more expensive than gas, but we're using that money more efficiently, right? More responsibly. And we're able to keep costs roughly about the same, depending on where you live and depending on what your utility costs are. So it's about using your resources responsibly and not flipping, because the hospitality industry traditionally has been dancing around the razor's edge of around 3 to 5% profit margin. Before the pandemic was around 6 to 7%. So it's gone down since then. And hospitality is a very important sector for our economy. And it, hires a lot of people. It brings in a lot of revenue. So there's a huge section there with the economics and the health aspect. Maybe we could talk all day about that.
Um, before we do, I'm curious about two things. First of all, I mean, the comment you always get from people who are attached to their gas stoves is, well, how is the responsiveness of induction cooktops going to compare with my gas stove, which I've had forever, and also heat control? How is that going to compare?
It's not. Gas is so much slower. To be honest, I mean, we are able to cook so much faster. So I do demonstrations where I'll take my saute pan, put it in the freezer, and then pull it out, put on the induction burner, put the cold vegetables and oil, all the things you're not supposed to do, they say traditionally to cook. And we're able to saute within seconds, right? Just to show how fast we're able to get things going. Normally, you would have to put your pan on, put the oil in, put it on high, let it get hot, and then you're at your bed, and then you go. Right? We're able to cut out all those steps and show how fast it is. And responsiveness, I mean, it stays within a degree, and no matter where we put on high or low, it reacts quickly, much more responsive than traditional electric, which isn't something I'm a big fan of personally. The resistive coils, they have their place, but in a commercial kitchen, speed is king, and nothing's faster than induction.
Yeah, it's just amazing hearing you talk about it and hearing the statistics about gas being so inefficient, how much resistance there is of people adopting induction still.
Yeah.
My parents live in Germany and they've been cooking with induction forever. And I don't think there would ever be a moment that my parents would say we want to go back to anything else. So I think once you're hooked, you're hooked. But how do you really get people to trust this a little bit more? I mean, I don't even know why people are so resistant to even try it out. I mean, what is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, people who love cooking rather, they're tactile learners, right? And they want to play with it for themselves. So I encourage everybody to go and play with it for themselves. I got my portable induction burner for like $80 on Amazon, and I've seen it get even lower than that. Additionally, marketing has been incredibly powerful. I mean, when I was a kid watching Daffy Duck say, "Now we're cooking with gas," like that was marketing, right? That was advertising. We had campaigns for people for decades saying that gas is king. It was just a really effective marketing campaign, which is why I tell people all the time, like, if you are cooking with gas, that's fine. You're not bad, right? You aren't bad for having gas in your home or in your restaurants because you were fed a bill of lies, and it's not your fault. Getting educated and then making a decision on what you want to do is the way to go. So I focus on education. I don't focus on shifting blame on any particular people and say, hey, it's your fault. How dare you cook on gas? You're making climate change worse. Like, no, that's not the case at all. But I will say that, if there is blame to be had, it definitely is on the people who have marketed and told us that it was safe, because it's not, right? And yeah, also getting more chefs on board. Getting chefs on board and getting them to speak publicly about this. Chefs hold a lot of power in the public discourse. I don't know why, but people trust us. We cook all day long. We know the equipment inside and out. No one is as intimate with this technology on either gas or electric front than chefs. So talk to chefs who have cooked on both. Have chefs go out there and share their stories. People will see that. People will trust that. Like, people don't even realize that if you tune into a cooking competition, more often than not, it's electric. In fact, the Boku store just happened last month as we're recording this. It was all electric. The Culinary Olympics happened last February in 2024, all electric. Every international culinary competition in the world is all electric. The best of the best have they've been cooking on this forever, and they agree and they understand why it's better. It's the people who haven't experienced it that have these blinders on, because they, again, were told and they were trained this is the best way, but no one ever explained to them why. And because if you really stop to really examine why, you realize it's not.
Could we take a step back, and could you tell us a little bit about how you came to understand that electric and particularly induction cooktops are better for you, better for your kitchen, and better for the other employees? Could you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Like most good things in life, completely by accident. I actually was brought on as the executive chef for Chatham University's Eden Hall campus. And Eden Hall, like the Garden of Eden, truly was that. It was my culinary Garden of Eden. It was being built as the world's first fully self-sustained university campus, and was also housing America's first all-electric campus kitchen. In that campus, I had my own farm, my own orchard, my own fish. We were raising our own trout. We were tapping our own trees for maple syrup. We had our own apiary. If I wanted mushrooms, they would go and inoculate some branches and chunks of wood, and then in a little while we'd have mushrooms. It's pretty remarkable what we were able to do there. And I remember being interviewed for that position, and they were asking about how I felt about cooking on electric equipment. I was like, I've never cooked on it because gas is king for a reason. Am I right? And they were like, no, this is what we're going to be doing. I'd love for you to be on board with this if you're interested. And I, never want to shy away from a challenge. I was like, let's do it. But I did have that bias in my head that gas is the best. I was told so. My chefs wouldn't lie to me, right? The industry wouldn't lie to me. And then once I got in there, how I realized the power of induction was, I remember walking my staff, because it was about a year or so after I got hired that we finally built this campus. Designing it and building it was a cool thing to see for the first time. And then we got into this kitchen. We were in awe of how beautiful it was. Had the staff come in. We were talking about the new menu, what we were going to be doing. Then I said, okay, here's the first dish. And I went, and I remember, grabbed a rondo, put a little oil, a little garlic in there, put it on the induction burner, cranked it on high, turn around to grab the onions. And in that split second, by the time I turned back around, it was black, not burnt, black, completely black. It was so powerful. We had no idea how powerful the induction burner was. I always thought, like everyone else, hey, electricity is slower. After that, we started to realize, hey, there's a reason why we crank things on high when we start anything in the kitchen, because it's just so much slower to heat up metal with fire. And then also, as years passed, we found out that, hey, like these pots and pans that we bought years ago, they're still perfect. And they're just like we bought them. So we're not replacing them. This is an additional savings that people don't talk about. And the kitchen was cooler. And that, in fact, in the winter, we'd be cooking with our sweaters on. And that's unheard of in a kitchen, right? You're normally hot trying to get these things off of you. Like the chef coat is designed to keep you from catching on fire, not to keep you cool, right? So it was a pretty remarkable thing to experience, and just falling in love with the kitchen, falling in love with the equipment. And then coming into the space to begin educating was, again, an accident. I was about 3 years in to my position, and then I got a call from Microsoft. They wanted to ask me questions about my kitchen. They wanted to get some insights because they were being pushed in this direction. They weren't sure. The chefs weren't sure. So we talked. It was September of 2018. I'll never forget it. We had an hour-long conversation, and I was just blown away. Like, wow, I got to talk to Microsoft. How cool is that? And a few months later, it was the first Tuesday back from Thanksgiving break, and I got a call from the engineer, and he was like, "Hey, I had a interesting conversation with my client at Microsoft, and I heard that you had a conversation." And I was like, "I hope that's okay," right? Because I'm come from a world where egos are a big thing in the hospitality industry. And he's like, "No, I wanted to thank you. We've been pushing them in this direction for 3 years and couldn't get any progress. And then 1 hour conversation with you, and they're on board." And I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay, cool." And then he's like, "Would you like to do this for other clients?" And I was like, "You mean consulting?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, consulting is what you do when you retire. It's like, I have a lot to give to the industry. He's like, well, there's a big conversation taking place in California, and it's going to be national about the electrification of commercial kitchens. And no one knows how to solve it because there are no experts. There are no people who have done it. So you're in a unique position. I think you can do good. And I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot. Then Microsoft asked me to be a part of the project, which I come to find out that you can't get paid as an individual, you get paid as a company. So that's how I started my company at the behest of Microsoft, which I'm not going to tell them no, obviously. And that's how this whole thing started.
That's amazing. And you also launched a certification system, which I would like to talk about as well. But before we get there, I would like to step back and really think about what it means to cook with induction in regards to indoor air quality as well. Because one thing, and it's kind of, it all goes hand in hand. One thing that is also apparent is the cleaning of the equipment as well. So, and having, dust on something that catches fire versus not, and what that means for indoor air quality. So that is something that I would like to hear from you a little bit more about, but
Yeah.
also, again, coming from the passive house world, we always look at exhaust hoods and what that means for energy efficiency, right? Losses through exhaust hoods. So is that different when you use induction versus gas, or
yes.
is it similar?
Oh, yes. Well, so for starters, you do have to have a type 1 hood underneath any equipment that is generating sufficient enough grease-laden vapor. What's an interesting game changer there is that Electrifying offers you the solution of using ventless equipment. So now you can reduce the amount of ventilation that you need. Which is a very big cost, right? The amount of tempered air needed to come back to a kitchen, the amount of, just the cost per linear square foot, I think it's around $2,500 just for a ventilation system. $2,500 per linear square foot is a huge cost, not to mention the cost of the equipment and all that stuff. So I worked on a passive house project here locally in Pittsburgh, and that was how I got involved. They said, hey, we can't figure out the ventilation. Can you help us? And then we came in, got creative, and we were able to cut the ventilation requirements in half, which allowed the project to be passive house compliant, passive house certified. And, it's just the power of the options that get opened up once you are fuel agnostic, right? Once you say, hey, I'm going to move away from thinking that this is the only way we can cook, you start to open up other options. On the health front, there's a significant benefit to that, right? When we burn fossil fuels, we're releasing methane, ethane, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, formaldehyde, all these awful things, right? Benzene that we shouldn't be breathing in. And yeah, we may say, yeah, but you can have this big ventilation system. So it's not just, you're not breathing it in. But the truth is, we're directly over that flame. So it's passing through us before it goes up to the ventilation. We're actually working on a commercial kitchen air quality study, which I'm embarrassed to say is the first study in the world to look at that, because no study has gone into a commercial kitchen. They've always gone to either a lab, or they've gone to a residential home and just kind of done some calculations, and they think it could be this. This is the first time we're going into these kitchens. We're sampling these kitchens. We're going to be conducting our final sampling trip in early spring, like April. So I don't know when this goes live. If anyone in the New York area wants to be a part of it, it is a completely anonymous study. No one will know where this data came from. We'll be paying you to allow us into the space, or your clients, and we will share the data back with you. So what we've seen is people who have participated in the study want to get that data so they can make a decision as to where they should start, right? Because sometimes sustainability, sometimes electrification could be a big, broad topic, and they don't really know where to begin. It's kind of overwhelming. So having some data to say, hey, this one piece of equipment was emitting the most is an easy way to go. Okay, let's start there. And then once you start, it becomes easier, because you don't have to go and do it all at once. I mean, if you can, that's great, but to electrify your entire operation all at once can be cost prohibitive for a lot of folks. And And what we're seeing with the data is pretty remarkable, what comes off of these gas stoves. And in doing more research, you find out that there's no indoor air quality standards in America. As a matter of fact, they couldn't create regulations if they wanted to. EPA doesn't have congressional authority. There is no agency in the United States government that has congressional authority to dictate or to mandate or regulate indoor air quality. And as far as I know, nobody wants it. So people may say, yeah, but they can do something about it. They can't. Legally, they can't. And we know that, for example, carbon monoxide, it is a bad thing, right? It's an odorless and colorless toxin. Typical outdoor concentrations are anywhere from 0.03 to 0.9 parts per million, or yeah, and it can't go beyond 9 parts per million without it triggering some sort of response, right? They go, hey, this is dangerous. We have to go and clear out whatever is going on. Let's find out what the source of contamination is. Let's take care of it. It's a very dangerous thing. But indoors, I mean, there are, it's far exceeded 200 parts per million, right? And we know how dangerous carbon monoxide is, which is otherwise we wouldn't have it, the detectors in our homes and in our work. And a lot of what's scary is that because there's no indoor air quality standards in America, there's very little ventilation requirements for residential homes, right? And so because of that, a lot of people don't even turn on their ventilation because it's loud. Oftentimes, if they do have ventilation, it just gets circulated back into your home. It doesn't go anywhere. So it's kind of, it doesn't do anything. And it sucks. It sucks for families. And there was a recent 2022 study that came out. There was a metadata study. Essentially, they took 50 years worth of data, put it together, and said, hey, how bad are gas stoves? And they found that alive in this country today, 12.7% of children on average can attribute their asthma to gas stoves. That is roughly 650,000 children in the US right now. And we also know that Black and brown children are 8 to 10 times more likely to die from asthma than any other demographic. It's a big deal, right? And if there was more education on the subject, I'm sure people would want to make that decision for themselves as to what they should put in their homes. And I don't think that any sane person would knowingly put their children in harm's way. And this is an easy thing to make a decision on, right? Now, when we talk about blame before, why I say that, if we're putting blame anywhere, it's on the marketing of convincing us that gas stoves are safe and that cooking on gas is safe. And they put so much money into this because they don't make a lot of money from cooking on gas. They never have. It's like 3%, 8% maybe of their total profits is cooking with gas, or rather is selling gas to cook with. Where they make their money is how you heat your home, how you heat your water, right? The thing is, no one cares how you heat your home or how you heat your water, right? It could be electric, they don't care. But if you can convince them to care about how you cook, then all of a sudden there's a gas pipe in the home. And then after that, it's an easy sell on water and ventilation. So what my work has been focusing on lately is education, is economics, and getting people the information they need to be successful.
Right, with all those energy efficiency changes, it's bound to be less costly, as well as the other factors that you mentioned. But I want to understand a bit more, because I know electrification of a kitchen is more than just the induction cooktops.
Right.
Understand a bit more about what your EcoChef certification system encompasses.
Yeah. So EcoChef is a certification system focused on making the hospitality industry more sustainable. And we do that in a number of different ways with a number of different pillars. The first is the energy efficiency pillar. The second is the health and comfort pillar. The health and comfort pillar. The third is the waste reduction. And the fourth is performance. We have innovation credits and things like that for those who are going above and beyond. But what we've done is created a system by which it standardizes how we design, build, and operate commercial kitchens. Because commercial kitchens seems to be the big thing that people are unable to solve for, which is why you see these mixed-use buildings oftentimes electrify the whole thing except for the first floor where the retail space is. Because it's hard. They don't know how. They don't know how to choose equipment. They don't know how to have that conversation with chefs. So we decided, let's solve those problems, right? Let's standardize this. Let's help people understand idle rates, efficiency rates, electrification, and how to go about it, and what are different things that you can do, well, such as benchmarking, right? Such as sub-metering. These are things that aren't really talked about for the kitchen, but we think are crucial, because if you electrify these kitchens and you capture the data of these kitchens, you can create case studies that are essentially the holy grail of data that don't exist, right? What equipment did they buy? How are they operating it? And what are their tangible real world savings? And then putting that on our website free of charge is what our goal is. So it can be used for policy, for education, for just having that conversation with your client and showing a case study. So EcoChef is a lot of things, and it's beyond the kitchen certification. We're also going to be able to certify pieces of equipment. We are an Energy Star partner, and we value what Energy Star does. But admittedly, Energy Star has a lot of red tape that we don't have. We're able to use and understand the data that's coming in and the studies that are coming out and react to them quicker than the federal agency. So we actually worked with the EPA on helping them understand how to create induction specific standards for ranges and griddles. So that was us back in 2022. They didn't get it passed, I don't think, till 23 or 4. It took a long time. It took 2 years, right? And now we have its standard, right, to understand woks, griddles, fryers, tilt skillets, braziers, ranges, all these different techniques, salamanders, that they just can't get to as quickly, right? So beyond the equipment certification, we also have professional accreditations in education. So we're launching our education in 2 countries. One here in the U.S., obviously, where we're based, and the second is in Barbados. So Chatham University and the University of West Indies will be the first schools to house our education. The education are going to be 3 courses. The first is it's a 13-week or like a full semester class, 13 to 15, depending on the school. Full semester class that helps them understand everything, right? Design, hospitality, anything that is within the EcoChef system is taught in that class. It's more of an entry-level class for those who are starting their careers. At the end of the class, they then get their EcoChef associate accreditation. So they'll have ECA after their name. It'll denote a level of excellence, a level of understanding of sustainable hospitality in the design. The next is EcoChef Culinarian, which we're proud to say that we're partnering with the American Culinary Federation to launch. That's going to be launching March 1st, where chefs will be able to then understand how to operate these kitchens in a complete manner. And I say complete meaning not just how to manage one metric. As a chef, we're judged by labor cost and food cost. What I want them to understand is how much water does your operation use? How much energy does your operation use? These always used to be fixed costs. They don't have to be, right? By using these technologies, for example, an induction wok can save you about 250,000 gallons of water per year per wok. It's a substantial savings, right? So understanding how to use equipment to your advantage and how to utilize them to the best ability is going to be crucial. That course is more of a condensed crash course in sustainable hospitality, managing waste, managing water, managing equipment, all of these things. And then the last is going to be the EcoChef practitioner. That one is going to be a little longer till we launch, sometime maybe this year. EcoChef practitioner are for folks like yourselves, right? Like your listeners, the practitioners who are designing these kitchens, giving them the tools to be successful. And understanding that we're not here to replace any accreditation or rather any certification program. We want to enhance what folks like Passive House are doing, right? We want to enhance what is currently offered out there and just solve for the problem of the kitchen. We're not here to solve for the entire building. You all have done a brilliant job at that. And then, yeah, again, you finish the course, you get ECP, and then additionally, it opens up an additional revenue stream because now you're able to handle the submittals for EcoChef. So instead of them hiring us to go and dig for all this information, now the practitioner will be able to do that, be able to charge for that, and be able to increase their revenue from it. So yeah, this is about creating a system by which we can provide practitioners with operators, with designers, the ability to be successful in implementing these kitchens and to work with institutions like Passive House to enhance what they already offer.
Well, this is really, really amazing. And I mean, truly. And I think for me, what's so right about this is to really connect the person using the kitchen, the chefs who are using the equipment with, being able to design the surrounding or design the workspace, because I feel like that's I mean, I'm not a chef, so I don't know too much about it, but I'm an architect, and I do know that whenever there is a commercial kitchen in a project, nobody really knows what to do about it. So
Unfortunately, yeah.
yeah, and I guess it shows when you're saying there hasn't been a study done on commercial kitchens ever. I mean, that's pretty telling.
I didn't know
So
that. It was a
yeah,
scientist that we're working with, which is PSC and Stanford, who were like, "Yeah, we did some research. We couldn't find anything on the subject." We're like, "Are you kidding me?"
yeah.
Since we started, I'm confident this is going to be a whole new field of research. Uh, just late last year, or maybe early this year, the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab has announced that they're doing a study kind of like this. So that's a massive one. That's in conjunction with the federal government. That is huge, and we are like that. And we also know that there is a student now doing something similar for his PhD. So it's going to open up a whole field of research that didn't exist before. We're going to get a lot more information on how the industry operates and how chefs operate and what we're exposing ourselves to.
Yeah, and I think what I really like about it is that you're coming from like, the world of the commercial kitchen and the professionals, but we all going to benefit from it. We're all going to benefit from all the research that you're doing, and especially from all the education that you're, teaching everyone.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, this is amazing. Thank you
I
so
appreciate
much
it.
for
Thank you. Yeah.
digging into that, because it's basically you saw the problem and you're just kind of going in head first.
Yeah. But like I said before, like most things are just completed by accident. Like this idea came from my business partner and I just literally just talking about, how can we grow our consultancy, right? Or, what is the problem with these conversations with folks not wanting to change? And then he's like, I wish there was just a standard. So that way it's not just us pushing this, it's other people, right? Creating a space, because we always talked about forward dining solutions, creating the industry for others to be successful in implementing sustainable hospitality. And he said, man, crazy if we, what if we did something like that? How crazy would that be? And I was like, that would be crazy. And then I talked to an architect friend of mine. He's like, that's not crazy at all. Let's do it. And that happened.
And I do have to jump in here and say there's a recent article on the Accelerator website about designing commercial kitchens. So there are, and the incredible time and attention it took to get these large size commercial kitchens. There's two examples that are featured, two student residences.
Yeah.
And what they had to do to get them to Passive House certification levels. It's
Yeah. I believe those projects were ran by Maureen Sanchez, and she's an incredible mind. We've connected recently, and wow, she's awesome. She's really excited about EcoChef as well, and she's like, this has to be something that Passive House can work with, and I'm really excited to see what comes of it, I'm really excited to see, how we can work with Passive House. Um, it's this whole space on sustainable design. Um, it's going to take a village for us to make a real impact, not as EcoChef, I mean, like as an industry. And I'm excited to work with people who see the vision, who care about their craft, and just want to make sure that they can create spaces that are not only beautiful but also healthy and they operate well, right? So,
And I want to jump back to, you mentioned incredible water savings from using I'm not sure whether it was an
walk.
electric wok or an induction wok.
An induction walk. So, yeah, a gas walk is on the low end about 100,000 BTUs. So to put into perspective, your uh, residential stove at home is 10,000 BTUs per burner. So massive, massive power output. That's where it starts. It can go beyond 250,000, right? But as we talked about before, heating metal with fire is a violent way of heating metal. It doesn't want to accept that heat, which is why it'll crack and warp over time. Um, Unlike induction, as it works with the structure of the pan, the molecular structure of the pan. But I'll save the science for another day. But because of that, that amount of energy, that amount of heat, everything around it gets hot. So in order to keep the equipment from falling apart, you're going to have to run water to cool it down. So there's constantly like a river of water alongside where the burner is to cool it down. Not to mention the water needed to clean the wok itself. And they're saying conservative estimates are about 250,000 gallons of water used per wok. So if you're an Asian restaurant, you have 4 woks you're using before anything else in your kitchen, before dishwashing or your bar or anything, 1 million gallons of water per year. And by electrifying and getting induction wok, not only are you increasing production, because that 100,000 BTU wok, you're getting about 20,000 BTU to your food. A 12 kilowatt induction hob or wok is getting you about 34,000 BTUs to your food. That's why you can cook so much faster. And because of that, the only water you need is what to clean off that wok and go, and then continue. So you don't need that river of water anymore. And that savings alone, we talk about the cost disparity of equipment, that by far, like that'll pay for itself within the year, really. It's a huge savings. And on the West Coast, water's as good as gold, right? And we know that water is becoming a more and more precious resource. So, this is about conservatism, right? This is about conserving the resources that we have. It's about operating in a more fiscally responsible manner. And imagine if we can be as a powerful economic force in the global economy with the margins that we're running, imagine what we can do if we could double or triple the take-home pay of of what the profits of an owner takes home. How much can you reinvest back into your business? How much can you then pay your staff? How much more can you offer to your local farmers and things like that? It can be a game changer, right? Here in Pennsylvania, like the travel and hospitality industries is the number 2 largest revenue generator for the state, behind only agriculture, which you can imagine goes pretty hand in hand. Imagine, and by the way, we only receive less than 1/10 of 1% of the budget, right, to advertise. And I'll give you another example. In Colorado, in 2023, the Colorado Tourism Office invested $4.8 million to advertise and support the hospitality industry. And that sounds like a lot of money, but really not when you think about it. And the hospitality industry then responded with generating $1.8 billion with a B. $1.8 billion in tax revenue for the state. That's a 375x return on investment. If I was a stockbroker and I had the opportunity to invest in something that's bringing in 375 times of whatever I put in there, I'd be crazy not to take it, right? Crazy not to invest in it. But yet we are consistently seeing lack of investment in this industry. So I think that there's a lot that can be done here, and why we should be talking about kitchens in the broader context of buildings is because we use the most energy, right? The average energy use intensity of an office building is around 30. You add a kitchen in there and it shoots up to 325, 400, right? A kitchen uses so much more energy and thus pollutes a lot more. But yet these, like in New York, local on the 97, it actually exempts commercial kitchens, and a lot of these other uh, works as well. And why kitchens need to be on the crux, you need to be center stage, is because New York, for example, 70% of their emissions come from offices. Oh, sorry, come from buildings, not transportation, right? So if buildings are the biggest contributor and kitchens are the biggest user of that energy and thus pollute more, why would you exempt that? And by their own metrics, to try to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, they're short by 20%. And they've done a lot. So next is going to be kitchens, but they just don't know how to tackle kitchens. And that's where this comes in. That's where EcoChef comes in.
Amazing. I mean, just the numbers that you just mentioned. I mean, I'm still thinking about the running water. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a
I
lot to
had no
take in.
idea. Yeah, it is. So I guess, I mean, it's amazing what we just heard from you, and so educational. And I'm sure everyone who's listening to this feels the same. What are action items? What can we do to push this along?
Well, for starters, call us. If we can help in any way with your design, if we can help in any way with certifying your kitchens, we're currently looking for pilots when the classes go live, which should be as early as March 1st. Take them, share them, uh, find out how you can make what you're doing better. Right? There's always room for improvement. As a chef, I believe that. We're always students. Um, so yeah, I would say give us a call. Let's see how we can collaborate. Let's see how we can help you. Let's see how we can help you and your clients reach those goals that you have. And let's start making a dent in this industry.
Well, that's great, but I can't conclude this episode without asking you, okay, what's a recipe that home chefs could relate to where you see a marked improvement in the outcome by moving from gas cooking to induction cooking?
That's the beautiful part, that there isn't, right? The idea that somehow gas is either a better way of cooking or is going to hurt your food or some way. Because people think that if you electrify, you're going to have an inferior product. And that's just not true, right? Because the conversation that we've had isn't, yes, it's been a great conversation on the equipment and the technology, but the truth is, it boils down to how are we going to get a piece of metal hot? And then from there, using fundamentals and techniques to cook, right? Sauteing doesn't change if you're on a campfire, a gas range, or an induction range. The saute is always a saute. A braise is always a braise. These things don't change. So, yeah, it's not going to change how you cook. As a matter of fact, it's going to refine how you cook because now you're able to cook and cook in a way that's not going to, it's going to be more environmentally responsible, fiscally responsible, and also for your health, more responsible. As a matter of fact, I put my money where my mouth is last year. And in September of 2024, I became the first chef in history to complete the certified executive chef exam in an all-electric kitchen, permanently debunking the myth that your fuel source is going to impact the quality of food. And I wasn't judged by chefs who have cooked on this stuff and are fans of this stuff. In fact, I was judged by chefs who have never worked in a kitchen like this. And they're simply judging your work, and that's it. How did you work? Did you work clean? What was the quality of the dishes? What was the technique? What was your knife cuts like? That's what matters. And yeah, so it's a great question. That's what I hear often. And yeah, I'll also want to bust another myth. And people who may be talking to their clients, and the client says, "Yeah, but the power goes out. We can't cook without electricity. So like we can't electrify." The truth is that legally, without running water or electricity, you cannot operate. It doesn't matter if you have gas. You have to shut down. So I would not enter into a meeting with a designer and then admit to doing things illegally. I wouldn't recommend that. Would not recommend going on live TV and telling folks, hey, we can't cook without, like if the power goes out, we can't cook because that's illegal. You would be admitting to a crime, so don't do that. But yeah, so electricity is going to be fundamental to how we cook anyway. Why not use it more responsibly and utilize technologies that are going to be more beneficial to your bottom line?
Amazing, your work and the way you talk about it. So thank you so much
Thank you.
for sharing all of this with us.
It's been a dream. Thank you so much. I appreciate the hospitality.
And that was Chef Chris Galarza, and you can check out the EcoChef program, and also a bit more information about Chris. Go to ecochef.org, and lots of other information there. And of course, Chris is obviously popped up in quite a lot of places, judging by that conversation and the people that want to talk to him after some of the great work and leadership that he's done. Mary, let's go to you first. What were your highlights?
Well, there were some great discussions there. And just for me, the percent that in a professional kitchen, the efficiency of gas equipment plummets to around 10 or 20%.
That's staggering. Yeah.
It's really shocking. Like what a waste of money, as well as, of course, all that burning, the consequences of burning gas and all the chemicals that you're breathing in from that is not a positive either. But
No.
But financially, that's really surprising.
Yeah, I mean, people may not know that. I mean, I've had the I don't know if it's the pleasure, but I've had the experience of working in a kitchen. I was washing the dishes, but being in a commercial kitchen, and we've probably seen commercial kitchens on TV. They don't tend to turn the burners off. They, during a shift, which can be a few hours, a lot of the burners will just stay on because the chef is as Chris said, speed is key, and you want to be moving things on and off as quickly as you can. So you got no time for turning things on and off. So yeah, those and that I think contributes to that 10% efficiency of the use of that gas is just a lot of it's just going into the air and of course all those pollutants. I also had no idea about cooling. I had never seen that. I had no knowledge of the need to use so much water for cooling around woks, which is pretty staggering. And I know that woks often come up as an issue when chefs who have been trained on gas, particularly if they're doing Asian style cooking, woks seem to be their biggest objection. So to the fact that Chris has addressed that, and that is not an issue anymore for an electric kitchen, it kind of just takes away any reason why you'd stick with gas. Ilka, what were your thoughts?
Well, I mean, basically along the same lines. I mean, I really, really enjoyed this interview. I think because it just gave you a little bit of an insight into a world that I'm not really accustomed to. So that was just really interesting, like seeing the commercial kitchen in terms of just how much waste there is in so many ways, in gas and like electricity even, and in water. I mean, that was kind of staggering for me as well. And I actually went after the interview, I went back and talked to my mom in Germany, and I talked to her about the induction cooktop because she's been cooking with it forever. I don't even know when they got their first cooktop, and she was like, yeah, of course it's better. The only thing you have to get used to is how fast it is.
Right. Well, yeah, and as Chris said, one of the first times he used it, he just totally burnt the onions because you expect some time. That's something you, as someone who's cooking, I guess you put that on and then you just it's going to take a while, so you sort of walk away from it and then come back to it. But yeah, induction, bang, if it's done. So
Exactly.
it would definitely change the way that you're used to preparing and sequencing and timing things. Lots of really great detail. Chris obviously really knows his numbers, and some of those numbers are really impressive around, as you said, Mary, the 10% efficiency, the almost twice as much. I hadn't heard that metric before about the amount of time or fuel it takes to heat or cook a certain weight or amount of food. That's pretty significant when speed is so important. But the key takeaway, that the sort of underlying overarching message of Chris's presentation is he's really figured out how to communicate the benefits of electrification. And I think there are some really good lessons in there for us, how we talk about Passive House in general. He started right at the top saying it's not about environmentalism, it's about responsibility instead of sustainability. And he's picked up on, I think, some key words that other chefs will listen to. And the other thing he said was that chefs listen to chefs. And I think there's some really good lessons in there for us when we're trying to talk about Passive House or communicate the benefits of Passive House. We often slip into talking about all the features and all the technical details because that's what we all like to talk about, but it's not necessarily something that the users of those buildings are interested in. And I think Chris has done a really good job of tapping into all of those really significant benefits about the health and the comfort and the energy efficiency and the cost benefits and how you can get a better return on, because those margins are pretty slim in the hospitality sector. Didn't mention carbon really at all, or any of those sort of environmental outputs or benefits, which, I don't know what exactly that looks like. I mean, it's something that I have thought a lot about, but I think there are some really good messages in there for us as a community to think about how we talk about Passive House and trying to focus on the benefits, not just the features. But I could go on about that because
He does have one significant advantage, which is that the payback time for going electric for a commercial kitchen, I forget exactly what he said, but it was less than 2 years because there's
22 months, I think he said.
associated with it. And there's such a range of benefits from going all electric. There's such a range of benefits from changing, from designing or living in a passive house, but those cost savings don't come about in less than 2 years, which it does give him a big advantage when he's messaging about it, because people pay a lot of attention to economics, especially when the profit margins are so thin.
I think the comfort and the health stuff is relevant as well, and a lot of people are not aware of how toxic gas is and how prevalent it is. And I've often thought that, because we've still got gas, and I'm kind of just waiting for our gas hot water cylinder to die so that we can get off gas. But listening to this kind of makes me think that I should just swap it out sooner rather than later, because that's a really good point, that even if I've got an extractor fan above where you're cooking, my head and my nose and my mouth are between the stove and that extractor fan. So it's not, definitely not extracting all of those toxins before they get expelled from the house. And I also like cleaning a gas stove is a pain. It takes ages, and then you use it once and it's dirty again. Whereas an induction cooktop, you wipe it, and it's so much better. And as he said, the pots and pans, so many benefits. I'm obviously sold. I think there's a really good opportunity there for us to think about how we can do something similar, talking to the benefits of not just electrification in general, but also wider Passive House. And I do think he's really onto something when he's using chefs to talk to other chefs, and he's going and directly talking, selling those benefits to other chefs. Whereas, we spend a lot of time talking to architects and designers, but we really need to figure out as well how to talk to the people who are using buildings, I think.
Yeah, I think for me also a big takeaway also was the just recognizing that there is a kind of a little bit or a bigger problem there with the commercial kitchens, that they are usually exempt out of regulations, and that he basically recognized that and is kind of diving into this whole world head first, with actually setting up a certification system to make these commercial kitchens better and more efficient, and teaching students to do so, and teaching other chefs to how to set up your kitchen better, more cost effective and healthier. So I think that's amazing what he has put together. I mean, it's a whole team that put the EcoChef together, which if you go on the website, there's so much information about it. But I just think it's great to just start starting this whole system, and other people participate.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'm very glad that you made that happen. Thank you very much to both you, Mary and Ilka. All right. Thank you very much, Ilka and Mary. We will be back again next week on the Passive House podcast.